Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another special edition of Outtakes. And tonight, I am very happy to have as my guest Justin McConnell, who is an independent filmmaker from Canada. You're in Toronto, right, Justin?
I am in Toronto.
There you go. And he told me just before we went on camera, he's so busy, he's not even watching the Stanley Cup final. So you know this guy is really working hard. Justin is just released a documentary called Skull World, which we're going to talk about, and he has an even bigger project called The Eternal, which we'll get into a little bit later on in the show. But first, Justin, let me welcome you to the program.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you along. Let's talk a little bit about Skull World initially. This is a rather interesting documentary, and it basically is about a friend of yours named Greg Summers, who is his alter ego, I guess, is Skullman, and something called the Box Wars. Why don't you set that all up for us and tell us what's going on there?
I guess people fighting with cardboard boxes and armor has been around a really long time, but it actually got organized in Australia originally in the early 2000s by these three guys there, the Australian Box Wars Council. And from there, it kind of spidered out throughout the world. And one of the next chapters was Canada. So they approached Greg, or Skullman, through his web show. He runs like a low-budget web show called Variety Store TV. So they saw that stuff. They approached him and said, "Hey, would you like to run Box Wars for Canada?" So he started it up in 2004. And then basically what it is groups of people get together and build armor and weapons out of cardboard, and then run at each other Braveheart style until they've destroyed the opponent's cardboard.
The need for preservation of metal music!
Now, this isn't total chaos. There are some rules and regulations to the game.
There's more rules in Canada than there are in Australia. The basic rules are just if your cardboard is torn off, your armor is torn off, you're basically dead, you're out. And obviously you don't want to hit to the head or the crotch or anything where you can be seriously injured. But, that happens because not everybody's going to be super accurate with everything. And it's just mainly safety guidelines and things like that. In Canada, it's two teams that fight against each other, so it'll be like an evenly matched thing. In Australia, it's literally every man for himself.
Oh, wow.
So it's a little bit more hectic there.
The actual cardboard weapons are pretty elaborate, too, and they seem to be a lot based on, I don't know, blade weapons, I guess, from the fantasy realm.
Well, some of them are. Some of them are actually like cut, basically, with like you put it in a computer program and it cuts the cardboard out.
I see.
So we're able to do that with some of them. Others are just like a big box attached to a tube, and that's your hammer, or whatever it happens to be. It depends on how detailed you want to get. I know the guys in Australia, they also work work with like box creation plants and stuff like that. They make cardboard Christmas trees and stuff like that. So yeah, their stuff is more complex as well because they can make specific pieces, but it's really just about a lot of time put into things.
Now, toward the end of the film, Skullman was able to take his team over to Australia, and they actually had a Canada versus Australia kind of giant chaos battle, if you will. And when they were talking at the end of the movie, the one Australian fella kind of put a bit of a damper on things, saying that he wasn't sure how much longer these games were going to continue. As far as you know, are they still running, or?
That's not really exactly what he said. What he said was that it was going to go from being like in a park open for the public to a more serious event where they, because what they've done from that point forward, they get booked onto music festivals as like acts on music festivals, and they got a manager, and things became more serious for them because they started making money out of it. But it's not. He wasn't saying it was over. He was saying that maybe the backyard nature of it in Australia is over for them because they've expanded so much. And definitely since 2010, since we went there, they've done a lot of huge battles with some pretty crazy stuff. They did one where everybody was a biplane, like a full on. So it was like a dogfight. You're running around wearing a biplane, and like big robots and all kinds of crazy stuff.
And do you see the Box Wars getting that big in Canada?
It's hard to say, right? Like, I mean, obviously when I said making the documentary, you hope for that rags to riches explosion story where, you know, it's a world famous thing. But chapters keep popping up everywhere. When I first started shooting, there was San Francisco, Australia, Scotland, and Canada. And now the Netherlands and France and the east coast of Canada, and like more and more chapters pop up like motorcycle clubs all over the place.
Wow.
So I think over time it's going to build quite a bit of a following, people doing this sort of thing. And non-sanctioned people too, just people that aren't part of the council, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Silly as to say, are just going to keep going too. So I think it'll expand. I don't know if it'll ever be like wrestling, if it'll ever be like this huge sort of. I think it's going to maintain its underground roots through a lot of it. I like to call it the basketball version of LARPing.
Do you see or think that maybe with the release of this film that possibly some chapters down here south of your border will happen?
We've already had people who've seen the film and wanted to start their own chapter or wanted to get involved in their area because some people have chapters in their area anyway. I don't know. It's too early to say the impact the film's going to have. We've got pretty wide distro for a very small documentary. Like, we're worldwide on VOD. iTunes are up in 50 countries. You can rent it in like Sri Lanka in 2 weeks if you want to. So who knows? Maybe some monks somewhere will take up the cause. It's hard to say at this point. Or it may not. You never know.
Okay, since the time that you completed the documentary to now, do you have any update on your friend Greg? I know he was working to get a steady television show based around the box wars.
Well, we're still loosely attached to that same company that you do see in the film, but he's made so many versions of the pilot at this point, and there's so many versions of the show that could be taken off, and he's still talking to people, and all his people are still talking to people. It could go any day, or it could take several years. It's development is one of those processes that unless somebody walks up to you with a suitcase full of cash, you never really know where you're at, and even then, who knows what happens, right?
Right, exactly.
People get stuff pulled away from them after they shoot the pilot. You know, actually officially after it broadcasts 3 episodes, you have no idea what's going to happen. But I'm confident that he'll get something come off the ground sometime in the next little while.
Now, maybe it's just me because I'm kind of a movie guy, and maybe I'm looking too deep into this. But when I first started getting into the documentary, the first thing that popped into my mind was Tyler Durkin and Fight Club.
Because he's got the dual personality?
Well, that was part of it because Greg is he seems to be a totally different person once he puts on that mask. I mean, he even his voice changes and his whole.
I mean, he's kind of a performer in that way, right? Like,
yeah.
Skullman is the persona he's in, but I have a feeling he can tell the difference between, you know, it's not like he puts on the mask and he becomes Skullman. He puts on the mask and he performs as Skullman.
I got you.
That's I guess, an important distinction.
But even these folks that they
Fight Club, I definitely see people coming out of their normal walks of life,
yes,
their boring jobs, and just like bashing the crap out of each other for
yes.
a weekend. Believe me, I've fought. You do get that adrenaline rush. You do get that sort of catharsis feeling. I could see that being like a safer version of Fight Club without the bombing of the buildings and stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought, that these folks were really getting a kick out of just getting out in the field and letting loose for a while, especially in the interviews afterwards. They all talk about this great adrenaline rush.
I think it's any sport you play with a group of people, anything like that, you're recapturing your youth a little bit, but there's also a camaraderie that builds up because, you know, you fought alongside someone or you fought against someone and they held their own pretty good. I mean, you don't get to compete like that in real life against people unless, you know, it's your, well, you know, if you work in an office or whatever, maybe you get your work done ahead of the guy in the next cubicle, you can go, suck it! The truth is that, you know, it's a competition and it brings people together. I mean, everybody stays friends afterwards.
Okay, now Skull World is out now. We have it on video and we have it on VOD as well. Yep. You probably want to mention a few places where folks who are interested in the film may be able to get it.
Well, the easiest way to get your hand on a copy or see it online or whatever is just to go to the official site, skullworldmovie.com. That has every link to everywhere it's up for sale. Amazon, Vimeo, iTunes, PSN Network's coming up, Google Play. It'll be on most of your major VOD services. If you have Xbox, you can watch it through Vimeo because there's an Xbox. Anyway, Go to skullworldmovie.com, or search it on Amazon, or just search it on in Google, and you'll find it. It's out there.
And what are you hoping for this for the release of Skull World? This is a pretty big distribution you have on this thing. What are you looking for as your end game?
It's big, but it's small. It's got really wide distro, but it's distro that is very creator driven. I partnered with a really good distribution company called IndieCan Entertainment, and I use some of his pipelines. But a lot of the actual pushing out to the market is myself and a few of the box orders helping out and that sort of thing. It is a very grassroots project, even though it's out there everywhere. The initial push is very grassroots. I hope people just see it and enjoy it, and if they don't enjoy it, I hope they take something away from it. Because I've noticed the reactions. People are two minds with the film. Some of them really, really like it for what it is, because I made an adventure documentary as opposed to like a deep psychological analysis documentary of a subject matter or a group of people or a person itself like that. And some people are watching it hoping for the deep questions, or for me to like take that hardline approach to Greg and be like, so why are you living in your parents' basement still? Like, why is this happening? Can you tell me about your family dynamics and stuff like that? And some of that's there, but I really wanted it to be more like you're with this guy for a 2.5-year journey in one's life, and just the amount of work he puts in. And because he's my friend, I guess at times it might seem like I'm just putting a friend on a pedestal, but it's more like it's more a universal message to me. More like, if you want something bad enough, no matter how outlandish, and you want to stay true to yourself, you can. You might not get there really quick, but you'll still at least get somewhere as long as you keep working, as long as you keep putting in the effort. Stay positive.
Now, this documentary is, I think, very different from your first documentary, which was Working Class Rock Star. Now, in this one, you did go down to the seedy side, if you will, of trying to be a rock star, and you interviewed members of established bands, plus bands that you had produced home videos for. And when you take a look at that documentary, and then you take a look at Skull World, there is a definite different feel on those two docs. So I guess my question to you is, what is your approach here to filmmaking?
Well, the first one really came out of a frustration for me, because when I first started shooting Working Class Rockstar, it was right when the record industry was starting to take a nosedive. I started shooting that in 2003 or 2004, and the bottom was just falling right out of the industry. And myself, as a music video and live video creator, I was talking with a lot of bands who tour and have followings that would follow them from city to city to city, but they couldn't rub 2 pennies together to save their life. And they're there entertaining people every night, and nothing's really coming for them because the money just wasn't there anymore. It's not the 80s anymore. It's not the 90s. So I made the movie from a very it was a bleak scene, so it was a bleak movie. People just told the truth. They were very candid, and at times, I guess it's one of those movies you watch the end of it and go, I feel really depressed. And I get that reaction, and I felt, you know what, I think if I'm going to shoot another documentary, I'd like something that uplifts people. And so I went with Skull World because it's a lighter topic, it's more focused on one person in his world, and at the end of it, the hope is that people come away a little bit inspired as opposed to, like, a little defeated.
He's crazy, man.
You are fighting the battles against evil, greasy, scumbag people that come into your lives. It does not matter what you are faced with, but it does matter how you handle it. So in relation to what I'm talking about, it is very similar to Skullman's box horse. If you fall down, then pick yourself back up and keep on fighting. If you cannot pick yourself back up, then you call for help to be picked back up, and you keep on fighting until you can't fight no more.
Aside from the Rock world, aside from Skull World and Skullman, you are a huge horror film aficionado, and I got to tell you that in your bio, you mentioned probably the one horror director that is at top of my list, and that's John Carpenter. And you also mentioned as one of your inspirations one of his movies called In the Mouth of Madness. And I know I've used that movie in my classes before, so we are of a mind here, Justin, is basically, I guess, what I'm trying to say. This love of yours of horror films extends itself because you actually run a horror film festival.
I launched a film festival with Rue Morgue Magazine and my company partnered together in Toronto back in 2011, I think early 2011. It's been 2 years. And basically I started at a theater called The Projection Group, a little bit of cinema on the east side of town. And every month we played a 2-hour block of short films that I'd sourced from around the world. And if I could get guests to come out, like the directors, locals usually, I would. And then that just kind of grew, and I ended up moving to a different theater called the Carlton, which is a more on the beaten path, a little bit more mainstream theater, I guess. And it's just taken off. So every month I basically scour the world for whatever the best horror genre-related shorts I could find, and I play them for an audience, and then I keep doing that every single month. People really enjoy the program. I partnered up a little bit with Toronto After Dark, which is the main horror festival in the city, and we kind of shared leads on shorts and that sort of thing. And it's gone great. I mean, it's slowly and steadily built its audience, which is kind of what you have to do for rep cinema type driven things. So yeah, littleterrorsfestival.com. If you want to enter your short or whatever, I take submissions all the time, and it's just great to see how many really talented people are out there. And now that the tech is cheap enough that almost anyone can produce something,
right?
It's endless. It's an endless, bottomless pit of solid work that needs to be shown to people that a lot of people don't get to see.
It sounds pretty interesting. I like the fact that you can submit right online too, and it's pretty consistent. So I'd like to at least see you get some submissions once this show airs from down here.
Oh yeah, we'll play, I think around 200 films so far.
Oh, that's good.
It's possible that a lot of people watching your show may already know about us, especially filmmakers. But we're always looking for content, and we are. I mean, like any festival, we're choosy, but we're not as choosy as, say, TIFF or one of the Fantastic Fest or someone. We have more slots because we do it every month.
You initially started working as an editor and a compositor, and you worked for a company called Anchor Bay.
That's actually a newer. I've been working with Anchor Bay for 4 or 5 years now, doing editing and stuff like that. But initially, I started my career doing artist TV commercials for Universal, Warner, Rhino. Like if Seal would have an album coming out, I cut 2 commercials for Seal, for example. I did about 150 TV spots over a several-year period, and then I branched off on my own more so, and picked up Anchor Bay as a client with my company. Anyway, sorry, what was your question?
No, that's okay. I was going to ask, how were you able to initiate when you first got that first position? How were you able to snag that one?
Well, that's actually kind of interesting. The Eternal. I've been developing that since 2008, and our initial meetings on The Eternal with Anchor Bay in Canada. So what happened was I called the U.S. office to pitch the film to them, and they passed me off to Anchor Bay Canada, and I sat down with on a boardroom meeting with them, and during that meeting I happened to mention, I also do this. So I gave them some samples of my DVD authoring and whatever commercial work I'd done, and I ended up working with them. So I've been working with them now about almost 5 years, I think.
And it was that relationship with Anchor Bay that helped you get your first film, The Collapsed, out?
It helped, but I can't take away credit from my sales agents at Raven Banner Entertainment, who did a really good job. What basically happened there, the reason that Anchor Bay ended up picking it up in 3 territories, is because we initially sold to Japan and Germany first, and then we sold to Lionsgate in the UK, and we did a theatrical in Canada that actually went to several theaters and did pretty well, and the reviews were good. And we sold to Super Channel in Canada, which is a pay TV station that started airing it. So because we had all of this already, and we had solid reviews from Fangoria and Ain't It Cool News and stuff, and because I sort of was an insider at Anchor Bay as well, I guess, I went up through the right channels, and they decided to pick it up. Now, I'm not saying that it was a nepotism thing, though, because they could have easily watched the film and said, yeah, this won't sell, or this doesn't work for us, but they didn't do that, and I'm thankful for that, because we didn't. We went. It's a tiny film that probably shouldn't have gotten the release it did.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to say that the wrong way, but it is a very tiny film that got a much bigger release than I anticipated, and I'm incredibly thankful that actually happened.
Now, even in this film, and it's a post-apocalyptic themed film, you take a different approach than most of the other post-apocalyptic type zombie movies that are floating around there. Are you bringing, or do you feel you're bringing the same different approach to your next project, which is The Eternal, which, if I'm not mistaken, has to do with vampires?
To be honest, The Eternal is actually a prequel to The Collapse, in a way. What happened was I had a writing partner named Kevin Hutchinson who unfortunately passed away last year. We wrote over a period of 5 or 6 years. We've known each other almost 10, or had known each other almost 10. But over a period of 5 or 6 years, we wrote 6 scripts and several other things, a graphic novel for The Eternal and stuff. And they all exist in the same universe, a little bit like how Lost is tied together or The Dark Tower is tied together. So The Collapse is actually takes place after all of the scripts we made. And The Eternal is a story element leading up to how that got there. But it's its own isolated story. So some elements from The Collapse are going to pop up in The Eternal, but in a very different way. Because The Collapse is a very slow burn thriller that's partially because of budget and partially because I just wanted to take a more dramatic approach to the horror genre, as well as I could, given the indie cast and the indie budget and all that sort of thing. The Eternal, on the other hand, is a balls to the wall action horror. It's very, very fast paced. The cast we've got on it, it's just gory top to bottom and very, very action oriented, and a crime drama. It's in a way it's a mob movie that happens to have a vampire in it.
I see. So, there was an older report on the Hollywood Reporter that said you had secured Michael Biehn for.
Michael Biehn.
Yeah.
He's very enthusiastic about the project. We're just like any indie project, especially because this has a larger budget than a lot of others. Just getting that last bit of financing together has been tough for us. It's not a huge budget. We're not looking for something crazy, but even on the indie level, I mean, it's just under $1 million. But being that I'm in Toronto and not in LA and not able to knock on a studio or production company door every 3 hours, it's tougher to get financed here because basically most of our funding is government based. And if you're not going that route and finding angel investors and people like that, they don't invest in film because tech stocks are a safer bet, real estate's a safer bet, all this stuff. They know that people investing in film have to realize they're not going to get their money back for a couple of years, at the least on the outset, because that's how long it takes for the distro to pay out, even with advances. So it's a tougher sell, but we are getting closer. We have some great producers on board. We've got Michael Biehn. We've got other casts that I can't publicly mention yet, but are all just as cool as Michael Biehn.
Okay.
So it's coming together, and I'm hoping we shoot in the fall, but I can't say at the moment.
Okay. I don't know. It's a pretty tall order there, Justin. Michael's pretty cool. Michael's
amazing. I mean, I'm ecstatic that he first came on board in 2010 in the fall, I believe. I was at AFM and I met up with him there for dinner, and he loved the script, and then we tried to get it off the ground last year. We had other cast members in some other positions that the buyers weren't that interested in, even though myself as a horror fan, I was moving forward trying to make a movie that a guy like me would watch and go, that's a dream cast. That's that's a horror fan's wet dream. And not the typical guys you see in every horror movie. I mean, as much as I love Tony Todd and Bill Moseley and guys like that,
Sure.
They're in so much now that I was kind of going for guys who were a little off the radar, but at the same time, have horror cred but the buyers want what the buyers want now, so you have to kind of have to produce produce in a way where you're satisfying them because they know what's going to make money, and it's a balancing act. You don't want to make your characters all wrestlers or something because wrestling's huge.
Right.
You want to kind of avoid that, but say that in the nicest way possible. People giving you money, things like that. It's a very difficult position to be in because you want to preserve a certain amount of artistic integrity on one hand, but on the other, you've got people telling you, well, if you get Taylor Lautner, it's going to be huge.
Hey, Justin, while we're talking about the Eternal, you actually have a short on YouTube right now, which is
Yes.
The ending of the Eternal. How does that tie into the actual movie you're planning?
It takes place about 4 months before the Eternal script actually does. The short concerns the lead character, the vampire, hiring people to kill him because he's tired of living. The world's gone to shit. And there's other reasons why he wants to die, but I'm going to save that for people who actually want to watch the movie,
Sure.
the actual feature. So basically, he hires 3 people, they pick it up and kills them, and it's just sort of an introductory piece to the character. We shot it in 2007. We started doing festivals with it in 2008, and because of the response we got on those festivals, and how much I really enjoyed the actor we found to play Samuel, the vampire, Adam Wilson, we decided, okay, we better turn this into a feature. So in 2008, we turned it into we wrote the first draft of the script, and it takes place about 4 months after that ends.
In our conversations, you had talked about, or you had casually mentioned, it's a lot easier now for people to make a film, to make product.
Yes.
Are you happy that the technology is so available, or do you long for a day when some of the amateurs were weeded out and only the hopefully top got?
It's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, the truth is, without the technology being what it is, I wouldn't have been able to do anything at this point because I don't have the money. I would have needed to go through the old ways, which would mean I'd have to raise money. I wouldn't really be able to test myself properly with proper gear. I'd be using handy cams and like that. So, I mean, I owe my career so far to the cheaper technology. I mean, we were able to pull off the Collapsed for $40,000 up front on shot on the Red and competitive enough to sell to 12 countries. I mean, that's something that didn't exist 10 years ago or even 5 years, well, however long ago. It just didn't exist. So yes, I owe my career to that. That being said, it's completely a double-edged sword because it means the market is overflooded, like crazy. If you go to a film market, like if you go to AFM or Cannes or anything like that, there's a million products out there. That never used to be the case. People used to be able to bring a poster and finance on a poster. Oh wow, that looks great. Well, here's your advance, here's your pre-sale. Now you could come with an armful of movies that you produced in the last year, and maybe they'll sell 1 or 2, but and every sales agent has like 50 titles. Most of them just disappear into the marketplace. You really need to be making things that are really distinct and really different. Because honestly, if you're a filmmaker right now, and unless you have an amazing, fresh idea for a zombie movie, if you're planning a zombie movie right now, they sell, but I wouldn't recommend it unless it's something fresh and new and you have the right hook. Because believe me, there's another 1,000 people that just made a zombie movie just like you.
Justin, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy day up there in Canada and stopping to talk with us. Best of luck with Skull World, and we will flash up on the screen again that URL so that people who are interested can take a look at it. That's all the time we have today for Outtakes. Until the next time, I'm Fiore, and remember, I'll see you in the theaters. And as always, I'll be the guy in the last row.